You are listening to Fox Radio 910 and 104.3. Welcome to Front Porch Tales, sponsored by Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia. My name is Linda Balentine, the president of Crowning Touch and your host for this series. I travel into the mountains to interview the people of Appalachia and collect their share of memories. So now, we invite you to sit a spell with us and listen to stories, both historical and current, that emanate from the heart of Appalachia. I'm still sitting with Lester on the front porch, and we want to talk about some of the old-timey characters that we so treasured knowing over all the years that we were here. They were so fantastic. And I'm just going to get Lester, pick your memory. Who are some of your favorite characters?
Oh, my. There's so many, and of course, they're all passed and long gone now. They were the old generation when we first came here.
Which would really have been called the greatest generation. These are people that right now would be over 100 years old.
They would have, they'd easily be over 100.
And they were the ones
They were older than our parents.
Yeah.
So, they were from the 20s, the teens, and the 20s, and the maybe 1900. Some of them even, late 1800s.
Yeah, that we would have met when we got here in 72 and 73 and...
When I start thinking about some of the older folks, there's a couple of brothers, and Charlie Burns and
I remember
Bill
Charlie
Burns. And Charlie was a blacksmith, a local blacksmith.
Yep.
And an incredible guy. And I met them over in Hightown at the general store one evening, and I happened to be over there. Jacob Hebner's general store in Hightown. Jacob's gone too. He was a fantastic. Him and Carol were wonderful people.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was over at Jacob's store, and went in this one Saturday and walked in and ran into these two huge.
Were they both bearded?
They were both bearded.
Big beards.
Big beards.
Very imposing looking guys.
Sasquatches.
Yes, I know they were.
They were just big guys.
I know.
Big guys. Anyway.
And gentle
we were
big
doing
guys.
something, and Bill come over to me. I didn't know him. And he said, "Well, who are you?" And he introduced himself, and he put out his hand, and I went to shake his hand. And when I put my hand in that man's hand,
it's like a meat cleaver.
It was like a child shaking a grown-up's hand. His hand was huge. I'm talking, this man's hand was a foot long and about 8 inches wide. I want to say that's an exaggeration, but it isn't an exaggeration.
I understand. You're right.
He was
imposing.
Just humongous. And Charlie was the same. And they were just gentle giants and humorous. And had all kinds of stories. They told me stories about when we used to run moonshine, and all kinds of good stories. Maybe we can run across some of the moonshine tales of all the stills and all the white lightning that was made out in the hills, the secret society. But anyway, I ran into Bill and them, and Charlie used to be at the Maple Festival, and he was a gas because when he had a little portable. For blacksmithing, it's like
forge.
A forge.
Portable forge.
Portable forge. Thank you, Linda. And he had a little hand crank on it that
would blow the air
on it. And this is coal, folks.
Yeah.
And Charlie mound the coal and moved the coal around was with his hands.
Oh no.
And you're sitting here going,
serious.
And people would look at him going like, what are you, they'd be astonished.
Sure.
And he would sit there and they're going, they'd scream out and stuff. And he would laugh and just chuckle from his deep innards.
So he had asbestos fingers.
His fingers were leather.
Yeah.
From working, from shoeing horses and putting harness together and all the work he'd done. It was so callous that he could scoop those coals that burn the snot out of you and I.
That's a good story.
And it was something and as a matter of fact, I think you took pictures of him. I don't know if you have him any picture of Charlie or not anymore.
I don't know. I have one in my brain.
I have one because he was.
I have a memory bank.
He was a character
yes,
in the Maple Festival, and drew what an attraction he was because he's so unique.
And Blacksmith Charlie made things. Matter of fact, Charlie made for me at the farm. He made hinges and hooks for my gates.
That's exactly right.
And he would sell some of those at the Maple Festival,
He
but
made
he made
pokers,
those.
he made
That's right, he
fireplace
did.
pokers, he made all kinds of things. I mean, just an incredible talent of forging and just full of all kinds of wonderful stories.
He had a great disposition, wonderful
Oh,
personality.
thank God they were gentle people.
That's right. He was a gentle soul.
Lord, I'd be running the other way if he got angry at me. I never saw that man get angry. So Charlie and Bill, just some unique folks. Henry, that ran the Bluegrass Mercantile store, Henry Marshall, another character, just a sweet soul, would do anything for you. He used to let us, put items on credit. I never knew you could do
no,
food
that was
or
the old time.
groceries.
He just had his little notebook with
a
a
little
line
notebook
and wrote
just
it
wrote
down.
your name down and what you happen to take. And so, well, Henry, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to pay you. That's all right. Catch me when you can. I know you're not going anywhere. And that's how people were in the general stores. I said Jacob and Hebner and Carol, who owned Hightown, which is, my gosh, is one of the prettiest places.
Beautiful.
The Hightown Farm.
His farm was in National Geographic. They featured it.
They featured it in National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly did. And they're gone right now. Carol was a World War II nurse.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, she was. And that's how they met.
Fine human being.
That Jacob was in the Army serving during in Germany, and Carol he got wounded, and Carol was his nurse.
That's a great
and
love
they
story.
fell in love and ended up moving out here to the.
I'm glad they got to enjoy that glorious spot. I've got to tell you a quick story about Henry Marshall. You're talking about credit that he gave.
Yeah.
You remember Bill Will is another great character.
Oh, bro, the Will.
And he used to try and teach me how to hunt. But when he went off on his hunting expeditions, he carried the mail.
Yep.
And he asked me to run the mail for him.
I forgot that.
And so I would do that in a 4-wheel drive vehicle. And part of carrying the mail was to always first stop at Henry's store, because Henry would have eggs for me to take, diapers for me to take, milk for me to take, chewing tobacco for me to take, and drop off with the mail.
Cigarettes is hard to
That's
say.
right, cigarettes at all of these mailboxes. And that's just what we did.
That's the distribution.
And of course, and Henry wasn't paid for that. I mean,
Right.
he was just hoping that the people would come on. They would call him, say, Henry, can you send this with the mail?
Part of the just how the community operated. It was kind of like you hear about things in Alaska with the bush pilots and dropping stuff off.
Yeah.
Same situation here. It's been going on for generations.
When you're living out in the mountains and you're close to people, you establish a sense of trust and of knowing who they are. So you really and besides that, they were really people of their word.
They were certainly.
They really valued that. It's something that in this society, I think we're deteriorating morally and every other way, but you don't have that same connection with people that they did, because they were so remote and they depended on each other. But I know one thing, when Henry at one point, didn't he have a heart attack? He had something. And people were there to help him.
Henry was shoveling his driveway.
Yeah.
And unfortunately had a heart attack, and we lost Henry.
That's right.
It was one winter.
But he used to have people come help him, because
absolutely.
Whatever he needed. There were other people shoveling the driveway. He just happened to do it that day. But they would do all sorts of stuff. They would bring him the wood. They would do all that other stuff for him, because he was the one
Henry's
giving.
store had a fountain counter there with stools.
Oh, forget.
And every time you walked in there, there was the stools were always full.
I just remembered the big jar of pickled eggs.
Oh.
And sitting around the fire. Every time I walked in there were always 3 or 4 men, because they burn a fire out in the mountains. They'd light one in June in the early morning and let it die out by 10 o'clock. But
just take the chill off.
To take the chill off. There was always a fire, and there was always
cool
people
in the mountain.
They would even sit around it when there was nothing going on in it.
Another character, there was a guy named Scoop Swecker.
Oh, I
happened
remember.
to be the brother of Patty Kaiser, who happened to be the woman I was telling the story about having the first lunch with or supper with, and the table with all that food set up. Well, what happened to be her brother.
Okay.
Scoop.
I remember Scoop.
And Scoop, he was another character, another storyteller. And I mean, I could get into each one of these people. I could get into.
They all
shared the stories of their lifetime.
That's correct.
And, unfortunately, I wish I had written down. I'm so sorry I didn't write down a lot of the history that I was told, because what's strange is I'm not even from here, but 50 years later, they use me as a historian now for the county. And I'm not even from here. I'm not, but
Right.
it's only because of my
We had
my
that close
influence and my
relationship.
relationship with the elderly folks here over the years. I have certain stories about the Indians that came here, the last group of Indians that were hunted down here, and this or that, or
Right.
or when the last trees, how the trees were, when the railroads came in, all kinds of really interesting stories. Bill Will,
Yeah.
quite an individual. He really linked on to all of us
Yes, he
and
did. He
became friend. Interesting enough,
Yeah.
Bill Will did. His children threatened to kill me and burn me out of my home, and came to my home with torches to burn me
because you
out
were
of
a
my home
hippie
because
because you
I
had
was
long
a
hair.
hippie.
Yeah.
They were afraid I was here to take their women or abuse their children and
Right.
make everybody drug addicts.
Right.
And there was the younger generation wanted no part
That's
of us.
right. Their parents were much more,
They tried to push my
embracing.
vehicles off the mountain. I would threaten because we came here trying to be peaceful and loving and
Right.
love one another. Unfortunately, some of these situations just got to the place where it was so life-threatening that I remember the time that I was mentioning here, being over at the Valley House when they showed up with a whole group of them with guns and so forth, and saying came here to kill you. They didn't know that I happened to be a hippie that had a gun in the house. And so I walked out with the gun and said, okay, you might kill me, but I'm going to take some of you with me. And everything stopped and kind of put an end to what was going on at that craziness at that time. And next thing I know, we ended up inviting them all inside, and we're all drinking apple cider, and they're drinking their whiskey and whatever. And today, these people that were the big threat and so forth happen to be some of my closest friends.
I know. They sit next to you in church.
They sit next to me in church.
Which is the coolest thing.
So we've all gone through a lot of changes.
We've morphed.
Including them much as us.
That's right. They have grown in ways different than we have grown, but we have all grown together.
We grew together.
And we grew into a solidified, community and appreciation of where we are. Now we're willing to do anything for anybody.
It's just so different. If I told people a story of us when we were in the Monterey hotels right in the middle of Monterey, and told them that we were me and my brother.
At the Highland Inn or at
the Highland Inn.
Yeah,
the Highland Inn.
Okay.
The Highland Inn. The big 2-story, 3-story hotel there. Somebody had bought it years ago. And
George Saunders.
No, this is after that, when it was really going downhill.
Oh, okay.
And there was a couple of lawyers from Richmond that bought the hotel, and they had a friend of theirs named Vivian that was managing it at that time.
Okay.
And we got to be friends with Vivian, and we were hanging out there, and we were having a dinner one night in the lounge area or whatever.
Like the tavern? Was it a tavern?
No, not the tavern. What is the main dining hall?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
We were in there having a dinner with all. So it was a closed deal.
Right.
It was summertime, and we're having a good time. And then somebody walked in. A guy walked into come in to see what was going on, and he had been drinking. You could tell. But we were being nice. And so we, let him in and said, you want something to eat, gave him something to eat. And I said, but this is a private party and you're going to have to leave. So he left. Well, on his way out, we're standing in front of the hotel, and he didn't like us telling him he had to leave. And he turned around, got in his vehicle, and this is Main Street in Monterey.
Oh, no.
And turned around, starts coming back down the road. And then Norm, what was Norm's life? Anyway, he owned High's Restaurant later in life.
Uh-huh.
And he saw this vehicle coming down the road, and all of a sudden he yelled out, "Watch out, boys, he's got a gun."
Whoa.
And at that moment, the first shot rang out and hit next to me in the doorway.
Really?
And lodged into the doorpost next to me on the right. That got our attention.
Wild West.
We started scrambling. The next shot rang out and hit to the left side of the doorway.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And 3 or 4 of us was in there. Let me tell you, the doorway was not big enough for 4 people to go through it at the same time. So we all got lodged in the doorway because we're trying to go through it at the same time. The third shot rang out and a shot above us and went above the door. And then he drove off. Well, the guy was believe it or not, a sheriff from somewhere down Southwest Virginia.
Be kidding.
No. And we got shot and everybody's going, what happened? You know, it was all excitement and said, yeah, he shot at us and and all this stuff. And then we just went back to
your party.
Like dinner, like it was
that's the other.
You know, nobody called the police.
No, because
who was going to come?
No.
We only had one, old sheriff Glenn Hammer, that was 80-something years old, or I don't know who was the sheriff at the time.
People, as a matter of fact, we've got a sign on the door on my accountant's door in our company in Roanoke, and it says, there's a great big rifle and a slogan. It says, "We don't call 911." And that's the way it is out here in the mountains.
Who would ever think you got shot at today? I mean, seriously, it'd be national or, at least statewide news. To us, it was like, what an idiot. Yeah. The guy shot at us. Everybody's okay. All right, well, whatever. What do you do? We didn't think about call the police, call the state police. We didn't even consider it. It was just like, what an idiot, you know. We went on about celebrating, but that was a little adventure.
Well, that's characteristic too. There's so many things that happen out here, and people, they don't just go, but they remember. So you better be ready to deal with it.
Let me tell you this. What I found out real quick is you got on the wrong side of somebody out here. It wasn't for the moment. It was forever. Because that's just how people held a grudge. If they didn't like you, don't try to get them to like you. There was no sense in even going there. That was a waste of time. And why? You can make all your reasons why they're this, that. No. Now, I know that you already talked probably about Rowan Selman. That was one of the last mountain men that lived out what they call Middle Mountain, out where we used to live.
Yeah, because he was really, really remote.
He was super remote. We're talking 15, 20 miles, remote.
Yep.
And wintertime, nobody out there, the whole thing. And we became good friends with him because we were the closest neighbors to him. And Tony probably mentioned about taking care of his telephone line and all that.
Yeah, he did talk about Rowan's telephone line.
Oh, my Lord.
Do you have another Rowan story?
I want to cut that doggone telephone line because we used to have to walk the mountains. It was a line through the mountains.
I know, but did it come through you to Fitz's house?
It came through
there?
Fitz's. It came all the way from Middle Mountain,
and
all the way from Fitz's,
all the way to Bluegrass,
all the way to Bluegrass to Fred Lustig's house.
Right, because he was the first
next
one
to
of
the Methodist church. It was that's where it stopped. And it was maintained, and they maintained it for years.
That's the wildest thing ever.
But, Rowan was...
and he would just use that. You can say it again. He used that line. What did he do? He tapped it if he was in trouble? How did it
that was his only communication he had.
It was
out
just
there
a tapping.
by himself.
It wasn't even a phone.
He could ring it. It was one of those old ring phones.
It was.
It was,
okay.
yes. And if you had to crank it, it generated a current, and it would ring the phone in Bluegrass through the ring by the generator that's in the phone.
He couldn't talk.
Then he could talk.
Oh, he could?
Yes. It was a single line that he could communicate and talk to Fred and say what he needed for supplies or if he was okay. And they check on each other all the time.
That's wild. That
was his communication to civilization.
Yeah, that's wild.
And he used to come down. You always knew when Rowan was going to town because you start hearing a horn beeping. Way up in the mountains, you hear beep, beep.
Did he do it around the curves?
Every corner he went around.
He would warn you
to make sure that he didn't run into some because they're all switchback dirt roads.
I know.
Single car,
that's right.
Truck road.
That's right.
And he had a habit of always beeping so he didn't run into anything. Now people laugh about that. Well, I'm somebody at the very bottom of that mountain came around a corner one time, and my friend's little Ford, I forget what it was, a Pinto, and a Jeep was coming the other way at summertime, and we had head on, and I totaled his Pinto.
Wow.
Not a good story. Not a fun story.
No.
One of my
because if you had just been like Rowan and honked every time you went
we would
around,
have known. And so Rowan,
he knew
who's the smart one.
Yep.
So I mean, oh no, we don't need to honk around, laugh at the old man coming down there. He became good friends of ours, and when my parents come down to visit me, they became real good friends. He used to my folks brought a trailer down one time, and my mom invited him for dinner. Rowan came for dinner in the trailer, and he's in there, and I'll never forget, 'cause I have Rowan's voice down.
Yeah, you
Pretty
do.
good.
Talk. Give me a little Rowan,
Well,
Selman.
my mom was there, and he said, I'm
Because you couldn't even understand
to my
him.
mom. So he said, "Aren't you a cute little thing?" And that's Rowan.
Yeah, it is Rowan.
That's Rowan. There's not anybody that knew Rowan pretty well knows I have.
You've got
Rowan's voice down. And so, who knows?
Brings him right back in here.
It makes you feel like you're in the room with him, because Tony used to, how you doing?
Didn't he wear suspenders?
He wore suspenders.
I can just see him, his flannel shirt and his suspenders.
Dr. Goodall had out there in the mountain, had him employed out there for grazing timber and so forth, and ringing old trees that were no account for logging and stuff to get rid of them, so that good trees that had value would grow. And
how would he do that? Explain to anybody listening what that means. When Rowan would go out and do that, what did he do to the tree?
He ringed the tree.
Does it mean he took a knife and went around it?
He took a hatchet.
Okay.
He took a hatchet
to kill it.
And he would kill the tree by ringing the tree.
Okay, so he took the outer layer of bark off.
He'd take the bark off and get to the cambium layer, which is the layer between the inner wood, hardwood, and then the bark. In between that, there's a little green-looking wood, light-colored wood. That is the only place that takes the nutrients for the tree.
Gotcha.
And will be next year's deadwood or heartwood.
I got you.
That'll add to the heartwood of the tree.
Right.
And he'd ring that. If you get down to that, then it prevents the sap from going up into the tree, kills the tree.
And then somebody comes along later. How long did they leave the trees like that before they take them down?
They were never touched. They fell down on their own.
Really?
Yes, they were never. They're probably fallen down
as
of today. Yeah, there was no reason to do that.
Why? When Dr. Goodall asked him to do that, why did he ask him to do that? To ring the trees?
In order to thin it out, to make room for the better lumber quality trees.
Now
for the better
I understand.
Trees.
I got you now.
So you get rid of some of the gums and birches and stuff that really weren't valuable, back then. I mean, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, when they harvest,
that's a whole
nother
thing. Logging here is very, very critical. Like in a lot of places that have, the
hardwoods.
Appalachians are the only place for hardwoods.
Right.
That's what built our fleet in the World War II. All the wooden decks and so forth on the subs and so forth came out of the oaks, out of this country. Yeah. It built our Navy.
Wow.
These mountains built our first navies back. The USS Constitution built out of the white oak from these mountains. That's what a lot of our sailing ships and schooners and so forth came from here.
Well, so he had an interesting job. And how did Rowan keep himself alive up there? He had a nice little hilltop farm.
He had a great little house and farm up there.
Yes, he did.
So forth. Yeah. Tony and
Maggie
and his friend and Maggie ended up
buying
that
it
from bought that off of Rowan eventually.
That's right. She did.
And lived out there. But Rowan was a critter. Bill Will, that you knew very well. Bill Will showed us how to hay with horses.
That's right. He came on over and we took our workhorse.
How many people have seen like these kick rakes and don't even know what they're for, or a horse-drawn a mower, or
a hillside mower in Virginia and West Virginia, designed for the Appalachians, has one very small wheel and then a larger wheel. Exactly. And then you can only mow going in one direction.
Exactly. You can only rake in one direction. That's correct. Mow in one direction.
That's correct. You had to double up, and it took you twice as long. And then we shocked we had an opportunity. That was quite a thing to experience. And I've got pictures.
How many people know how to put a harness on a horse?
That's correct. And we logged the horse every winter.
What was the name of that horse?
Biggers.
Biggers.
No, blackness.
Blackness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
blackness
We had
and
called them
biggers.
biggers, but it was.
Yeah.
We called them both things.
Do you remember the time they were harnessing him up and a fly bit him or something like that? And he tore down that doggone split rail fence, and we saw just how powerful a horse can be.
Well, I came back from Thanksgiving once because we used to go away for Thanksgiving for just a few days, and we left all the farm animals. We left them lots of hay and everything, and we came back, and the front gate was missing. And remember, we had just finished talking about the blacksmith that went ahead and put all that together. Well, Blackness had gone ahead, a great big percher on, huge horse, 17 hands plus high. He had reached through the gate, lifted the gate up on his neck. I don't know how many days he walked around with that on his neck. But a hot-blooded horse, a riding horse, would have killed himself.
Oh,
trying
absolutely.
to get. He would have run and killed himself.
He was so well-natured, that horse.
He was just grazing with a great big giant, and this was like an 10 foot gate.
My dad was always concerned about me being around horses. Because he grew up with them.
Yeah.
And he did gardens with teams and so forth, and he'd always say, "Son, a horse will kill you in a heartbeat."
That's right.
And a horse can kill you in a heartbeat.
They can kill you.
Got to know what you're doing.
So you get these gentle souls. And then they're very valuable. A good horse. We used to take him and go plow other people's potato fields because in the spring you can go out and plow with a horse faster than you can waiting for the ground to dry enough. A tractor packs it down, right? But a horse doesn't pack it down.
Won't pack it down.
And so we got asked. We used to just walk our horse around down there to Daisy Arbogast's house and plow up her potato field and anything that people needed done. We went over to Floyd Blanche's.
Bill Will happened to show us there because he did that when he was a kid.
That's correct.
He had all that knowledge and he shared it with us. We learned how to, rake, cut, how to cut down with horse-drawn mower. We did that. We learned to use the kick rake and kick it into windrows to dry it out. And then we went in. Remember, everybody has a long pitchfork that's like 12 or 14 foot
you
long.
Got to pitch the hay up in the shocks.
But didn't know why you had a 14-foot handle on a pitchfork, because it was for making shocks.
That's absolutely
correct. And a shock is nothing but a mound of hay where you put a pole out in the field.
In the middle and build around it.
And then you set that in the ground, and then you built the hay around it, and it could only be as high as the fork could reach.
That's right.
That's
and then later on, I remember we did use our pickup. We carried it into our log barn.
We would do
put
that.
some of it in there like that.
Yeah, we would do that.
Well, you know what? We got to say goodbye.
Already.
Wow,
we'll talk about too much fun.
I know. We can talk about the fence rail building next time because Bill Will taught us how to do the chestnut fence rails, split them, and there's a right and a wrong way to set a fence.
Absolutely.
We'll catch you next week. Thank you, Lester. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you.
You've been listening to Front Porch Tales, courtesy of Crowning Touch Senior Moving Services of Roanoke, Virginia, the only moving company with a consignment shop, auction house, and real estate division. We are a one-stop shop for any senior making a move. Check out our website at crowningtouchusa.com. Or if you are planning a move, call Anna at 540-982-5800 to arrange a free estimate. Our consignment shop is open Tuesday through Saturday, and we accept items on appointment and offer pickup and delivery. And don't forget to check out our monthly browse and bid auctions at 6712 Williamson Road, Roanoke, where you can bid online on over 1,700 items each month. Meanwhile, let's get back together next Friday at noon for more Appalachian Tales from the Front Porch on Fox 910 and 104.3.